It's Friday, December 17th, 2014, and let's talk about what happened this week over at xdadevelopers.com. First up, device and ROM updates. As we've mentioned before, about a month ago, Motorola started pushing out Android 4.4.2 to the Moto G. Well, like I said, it's been about a month, and as of now, the kernel source for the Moto G has been made available for this version of Android. But in addition to that, the rollout of KitKat to the Droid Mini, Max, and Ultra that we talked about a little while back has apparently been expanded. It was initially sort of a soak test to just a few select users, and now it's rolling out to a lot more people. So if you have the Droid Mini, Max, or Ultra, go ahead and give a check on your device, see if you're ready to get the update. Although be on the lookout because it's coming from Verizon, there's going to be a lot more bloatware in this newer version. And actually, speaking of the Moto G, there's been several newly released Moto Gs in the last few weeks. The one specifically that really stands out for us is the Google Play Edition Moto G. Now, you might be asking what's the huge difference between this and just the Moto G, because the Moto G itself is pretty close to stock. This one is full stock Android. This is Google Play, AOSP, nothing else on top of it. The Motorola one does still have some minor customization, some minor tweaks, and honestly, they might be some minor tweaks that you would probably prefer to have. Just sort of depends on your preference. The prices are exactly the same as the AT&T, T-Mobile unlocked GSM type models, the worldwide GSM models, so there's not anything really to gain or lose by going from one to the other. Now, the amusing thing to me, and I don't remember seeing this in any of the posts on the XDA portal, there's also been a Verizon variant of this that's been released, as well as a Boost Mobile variant. The Verizon one is selling in Best Buy stores and other places like that for $99 on prepaid only, meaning you can't just pop out your SIM and stick it in there. It's a 3G device, so you have to have it CDMA, and it will only work on their prepaid bands. And then the Boost Mobile one, of course, works on the Sprint network, so it's 3G only. It's not going to have a SIM slot. It's going to work pretty much the same as the Verizon one. So really interesting to see what kind of device, what kind of specs they can pump out there for $100. And this is completely unsubsidized. You're off contract, you're prepaid, but you're tied to their network. So they kind of get their little bit of subsidy in there in that their prepaid prices are kind of high. Anyway, moving right along, we've talked several times in the last few weeks about some leaked Samsung updates coming out. Specifically, just off the top of my head, one of the Samsung Galaxy S4s that we mentioned before. Well, as of this week, the Galaxy Note 3, specifically the SM-N9005, has received a leaked update to Android 4.4.2. It was discovered by a couple of members, and then it actually started to roll out to people in Poland. And what's more, Chainfire has already gotten his hands on this update and has gotten his CF Autoroute to work with it. So if you can get it to work on your device of choice, I don't know, go ahead and take a look at the forum thread for all the details on it. Like I said, I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to work on anything but the N9005, but it's still worth reading up on and just finding out if people are working on getting it to work on other devices as well. Now, moving from very new Samsung devices to kind of older Samsung devices, thanks to XDA recognized contributor and developer DeHero1602, there's now a port of CyanogenMod 11, KitKat 4.4.2, for the Samsung Galaxy SL. Yes, this is a device that was released back in 2011, and it's running a single-core 1 GHz processor and 478 megabytes of RAM, which realistically should not be feasible for KitKat, but apparently it works, at least to some extent. Now, this is still to be considered kind of early alpha, but apparently the only thing that people have really complained about so far is Wi-Fi tethering is not working. And of course, a very cool thing about this is he's also managed to port over a newer version of the kernel, because the previous ROMs that have been made on older versions were running version 2.6.35. The newer one is now running on version 3.0.101, which, if you know a little bit about the Linux kernel, you know that 3.0 was a pretty decent step forward, at least in terms of performance, and just a lot of pretty major tweaks to the entire Linux system. So if you still have your hands on a Galaxy SL, you might want to go ahead and check out this thread just to see if you can get your hands on some new prettiness. Now, speaking of all these Android KitKat updates, there's always going to be one that just isn't going to get it. At least not officially. You know, that last device I was talking about, it didn't receive any updates after Gingerbread, and it's still being supported by the community, of course, but the manufacturer abandoned it. Well, apparently a couple more devices are getting abandoned right now, and those come in the form of the HTC One X and the HTC One X Plus. The news was initially mentioned over on HTC's UK Twitter account, and then it was confirmed in a report to The Verge yesterday, I think. And realistically, looking at this, I can only say it's kind of a shame, because the HTC One X and One X Plus were really not that bad of devices, especially when compared to some other ones that have started receiving KitKat updates. Now, that said, I'm sure that the community will continue to support it. The people that own the device will continue to update for it. They'll do the best they can, but the manufacturer has just come out to say they're not going to be bothered anymore, so that's a thing. Moving on to Android 4.3 news though, apparently as of this week, an OTA to Android 4.3 has started rolling out for the Samsung Galaxy S4 Active, specifically the AT&T variant. The biggest thing I can see being added by this, aside from brand new bloatware thanks to AT&T, is Galaxy Gear support, so it's not going to be a huge difference other than just getting Jelly Bean on the device. And it's thanks to XDA forum member XAJCX for mirroring this OTA update. If you want to get a copy of it and you haven't already received it over the air, you can do so through the forum. Just keep in mind, if you want to install this over the air update from the mirror, you have to actually have your device rooted, and you put it in /data/FOTA. You just put the update in there and then update it. But you can head on over to the forum to get all the details on that, see if anybody's having any issues with it, things like that. And continuing in that vein of Android 4.3, we've spoken of several devices that have had leaked updates to Android 4.3, specifically in the Sony realm. Well, as of this week, the Sony Xperia V has a leaked 4.3 firmware available. But after mentioning all of these leaks, apparently Sony has just gone ahead and given up and mentioned on their mobile news Twitter that they will be rolling out this 4.3 update to the Xperia T, TX, V, and SP sometime at the end of January or the middle of February. Now, as I've mentioned, there are leaked over-the-air updates, so you can go ahead and get them and try them out if you want to, or you can wait for another few weeks or a month to see if you get them over the air. If you're watching this video, you're probably not waiting, so let's go ahead and just move on. Now, moving in a bit of a strange direction, I saw a load of stories showing up, not just on XDA, but over on every news site that I follow this week, talking about Nokia, or however you want to pronounce it. I genuinely don't care at this point. But as you know, if you follow Nokia, they do tend to primarily focus on Windows Phone devices at this point, but apparently they have a prototype that they're working on they're calling Normandy, which is going to be running Android. And there have been a lot of leaked shots coming out of the device, shots showing it actually running the UI, which kind of looks like the Windows Phone Metro tile type UI, but it's running Android. And even more on top of that, it looks like it's got dual SIM slots. But from the screenshot showing the Android on the front of the device, you can actually see two different widgets at the top showing the amount of signal for each SIM. So we're just assuming that that would be a dual SIM device. So between Nokia designing a potentially entirely new launcher on top of Android that looks like Windows Phone, which is kind of interesting, and Samsung designing one that kind of looks like a magazine, the future of the third-party Android OEM skins or Android spins, whatever you want to call them, looks interesting and kind of confusing and kind of fragmented, but I don't know. I guess it's sort of buy a device to get what you want on it, and if you don't want that on it, you can try to rip it out and put AOSP on. But back to the story at hand. If you're interested in learning more about this Normandy device, this potential prototype that could just be a whole lot of fabrication for all we really know, there are a couple of posts over on the portal you can take a look at to get some more information. And the very last thing to mention, there were 3 other videos posted to XDA Developer TV this week that were all done by TK. The first one was another XDA Exposed Tuesday talking about Root Cloak, and then he posted a device review of the Omate TrueSmart smartwatch, and then he posted an app review showing off calendar status. So if any of those videos sound interesting, of course you can find links to them down in the video description. You can also find links to all the stories that I talked about down there, as well as the YouTube channels that I run if you'd like to just go see what I do on other YouTube channels. But as always, remember, if you like this video, you can hit that like button down below the video. We definitely appreciate it. Subscribe to receive our content as soon as it becomes available. Thank you so much for watching though, and I will see you again next time. Bye guys.